Welcome to the Chit Chat. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Adam.
And today we're going to be talking about the Gaia Project, which is a Terra Mystica game. The first time that we saw this on the shelf, our first thought was a Terra Mystica game. We already own Terra Mystica. We love Terra Mystica. What does that mean about the Gaia Project? Do we add it to our collection? Is it superfluous? We're going to get to all of those questions. But first, we're going to talk about the Gaia Project in and of itself, just by itself.
Absolutely. So first things first, let's talk about components. Components are such a crucial feature of games to the point that many people, are either turned on or turned off by the components of a game almost immediately. I think to talk about the components here, one of the things that I probably want to do is I want to pan down and look at the components. We actually just finished playing a 3-player game. We've cleaned part of it up, but if we go ahead and look at the board, we'll be able to point a few things out while we talk about them.
So as you can see, the board is modular. It's double-sided, and it does have a suggested initial starting out configuration, but for replayability, you can flip them over, rearrange them, and so it really does add to the variability of the game.
Yeah, there's actually a lot to this. I do really enjoy how the components look. You've got a lot of space out here. We've kind of left it set up so you could see some of the plastic components set up. We might talk about them a little bit more in detail here, but the base board is a fairly decent and fairly thick cardboard here. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, but it has had some fairly extensive warping when I first got the game out. Now you're looking at the board, it's been corrected, it's flattened, etc. But for the first several times I played this game, even though I had flattened it out before the game, it went ahead and curled up on me. So you had some breakage between the boards. And that was probably one of my biggest complaints.
The other thing is that the pieces are made out of plastic, which initially I felt like was going to look and feel a little cheaper. But they're really high quality. There's a lot of detail in the pieces. You can see that there's little ones.
Yeah, I got long arms. I'll see if I can get one close to the camera. So basically they have a decent amount of detail actually in them. I know that may have been a little odd with me just coming too close there, but I was right with you. I thought the plastic was going to come off as cheap. I typically prefer wooden components, but the detail on them really does make up for the loss of the wood. You lose weight.
And the colors really pop against the dark space background of the board, which is also nice aesthetically.
Yep, I agree. There are also a few other components over here. So you have quantum intelligence cubes, which are these nice, shiny King of Tokyo style little cubes. And I found them to be interesting and a decent quality for it. Really, like I said earlier, my only real problem with the components themselves, I think, were the warping of the player boards and the warping of the mat.
Initially, but it was able to be fixed.
It was.
So.
Let's also say that I think it was a really good idea to track your money on your player board. So there's actually no money components in this game. So even though you have resources of ore, money, and wisdom or knowledge throughout the game, you don't actually track those anywhere but on your board. You don't have a giant pile of those things. They're not more things to punch out or more things to hold. This could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what type of player you are.
The components were very well thought out. Everything has multiple purposes, so you get a lot of bang for your buck there. So we're going to move on to talk about...
We can talk about maybe the art a little bit first. I know we somewhat touched on this, and this really kind of dovetails into or is really related to the component quality. But the art itself, I think the board is bright and pretty, but I wouldn't say it really stands out. The God track itself is also just... Not the God track, I apologize. I'm thinking Terra Mystica still. That's a problem. But the technology track and everything, it's a little bland. It's easy to read, but it's a little bland. And then the player boards, which I'll go ahead and clear one off here so that we can look at, they're all Again, easy to read, but they're not stellar artwork. So
art is very generic.
Agree.
It's nothing special, absolutely. Bright colors, it's not bad, it's just very plain.
Mm-hmm. What else do you think? Anything else to cover on art and components?
No, not really. I mean, there's a lot of components.
Yep.
There are a lot.
I think overall
but
for the
quality
value
is on point for the weight of the game that it is.
Okay. I think I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5 on the components, I guess. I hate to give arbitrary number of values, but because of the volume of the components and how well they're produced, I think I would give them high marks outside of the warping. But based on at this point, I now feel like I fixed it, so I'm going to get rid of that complaint. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's move on and talk about gameplay. I'm going to let you start hitting some of the highlights of gameplay that you think, and then I'll kind of add in.
Mm-hmm. I think that gameplay is very similar to how you would do a lot of worker placement type games. It's all about efficiency, and I thought it's not too fiddly. There's lots of different ways to score points, keeps everything fairly balanced. I didn't really have any complaints as far as that goes.
Okay. Yeah, I think something that I want to cover here is that mechanically it is a resource management game and an engine building game. It's not actually a worker placement game, so you don't actually have those mechanisms here, and I want to be pretty clear about that in this video. It is a longer game. It's really heavy, it's tight, and it's punishing in many ways. So a lot of the mechanisms on how you gain income are based on the buildings and the structures that you build out on the board. And so that's a big resource management piece, is as I place things out on the board, I'm giving up income of other types. So maybe I'd be gaining mining resources. Well, I might replace that and now I get gold, but I don't get any mining. And so it can be pretty punishing for newer players. Mm-hmm. And I just want to mention how heavy that is.
That's fair. What I meant was it's similar to a worker placement in that you have to be very efficient with your resources.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with resources are very, very tight. Fluidity of the game. So there are 6 rounds. There's scoring during each round. And then there is a final scoring in which you're competing on 2 different final scores. This is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to if you're a Terra Mystica player. But I feel like it was fairly fluid. They added a phase, which again, rolled through very nicely. It doesn't take any extra time. I think the player factions appeared to be very well balanced. Mm-hmm. Very novel, actually. So they felt very unique out of the 4 or 5 that we've seen so far. So that I was really happy about. The technology track gave you an additional way mm-hmm. to really differentiate yourself. It's also variable setup. So the technology track is going to have different standard technologies that go under the research abilities. So the research abilities let you get better at different things, like how well you make a planet habitable, how well you can travel to other planets, how well you can just do science in general. But then the technology tracks give you different income and different actions. And so there's a lot of choices to be made there.
Yeah, so that really adds to replayability. So depending on which faction you have, which their special power is, and then you can have lots of different strategies based on which technology tracks you choose to focus on. So there's a lot of different ways you can try to make the game new.
I agree, yeah. There's definitely a lot to dig through. And again, I've said we have seen 5 factions. There's actually 14 factions in this game. Mm-hmm. And so at the time of this review, we have not exhausted anywhere near the amount of gameplay you can get. I feel like I've got a good grasp of this. We're scoring fairly well at this mm-hmm. point, but we've definitely not seen all the game has to give. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about a few other things here. How do we feel that some of the bonuses work, the scoring works? Do we feel like it's even throughout players?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely one of the best aspects of this game. It's very well balanced, which is difficult to do on a heavier game, and to make all of the different benefits and bonuses and player actions feel balanced.
I agree. You're only going to see a runaway if somebody has played before. It's going to be one that rewards replay very quickly. So I would say it is pretty much a no luck game. If I've played 10 times and you've played 0 times, it'll be difficult to overcome that experience gap.
I did beat you on the first time I played, though. So
that's true.
It's not,
but it's very similar to Terra Mystica. She's played that several times, so it's not terribly fair to say there's no learning curve there. And I don't want to imply that. I don't want to take the win away from her either, but I don't want to imply that there's no experience curve here, because there is.
It's definitely a heavier game. It's going to benefit players who know what they're doing.
Okay, so for gameplay, we've hit the fluidity of the game, we've hit the scoring of the game, we've hit balance. Are there any other things that you think you want to really cover here?
I think it's nice, similar to Terra Mystica. You know from the very beginning what things are going to score in what round, so you can really plan ahead. You know from the very beginning how many rounds it's going to be, which I really like in a game. Some games end as soon as you hit a certain win parameter. But I am a slow player. I like to build up my engine. And so I like having a set amount of rounds, knowing exactly what's going to score and what time.
You play the long game?
I play a long game, yeah. And then the other thing is that you score everything as you go. Some games you score at the very end, and so it's hard to really see how you're doing compared to everyone else. And so I think that's also a strength of this game, as far as throughout the game you're scoring, you're keeping track of everything, so you know exactly where you stand
in relation to other players. People. Yeah. Yep, I think that's nice. So time-wise, this game is going to run, I would say, 30 to 45 minutes per player. It's going to run a little bit on the long side when you're first at it. I think most of the first games that we played with 3 players ran at about 2.5 hours to 3 hours with a 30-minute explanation. So there's a good amount there. You can cut that off again if you've played similar games like Clans of Caledonia or Terra Mystica. Both of those will give you a little bit of a benefit when playing this game because the structure is similar.
A lot of the mechanics are similar.
Yep. So I personally can't think of anything else that I really want to talk about on gameplay. I find it to be a really, really rewarding experience. So I think it's something that I always just really want to come back to. Again, even though I find it similar to Terra Mystica, it stands on its own as a game. It is not Terra Mystica. And for this type of game, I think I could get 80, 100 plays out of it and not be upset. I think I would still enjoy getting more of that. So that really speaks to the replayability to me. We have not really talked about theme. The theme is a space theme. I'm going to say I feel like it could have been anything else.
Yeah. It's a very generic space. The theme didn't come through very strongly.
Sure. The navigation action is how many hexes you can move, but that easily could have been, a boats. Western stagecoach, and that's how far you can ride your carriage, or boats, how far you can sail. Airplanes, how far you can fly. It would not make a ton of a difference there. But if you like space, that might help you here, but it's not going to necessarily feel space-like. I would also say I feel like there are multiple paths to victory, and this is not something we really covered in gameplay. We said it was very variable, but game to game, there's still not one strategy that will win you that game. There's not a best strategy for game X.
Right.
Yes, you need to adapt to the board, etc., but the way you go about maximizing your faction can be different.
Some people might see that as a disadvantage as far as it being a little bit too much of point salad.
Maybe. It's hard for me to call this one point salad, though. You don't get points for everything you do. You have very, very specific things. You score during the round, you score at the end of the game, that's it. You're getting some points for creating federations, which are large groupings of your structures, but that is a stagnant bonus that you're going after. And so it's not really like every action you take takes a point. And you really need to plan ahead because the actions that give you points during the rounds, they won't give you points all the time. So maybe if I build a mine this time, I get a point. But if I build it 2 rounds later, nothing.
So the question of the day.
Question of the day. Sounds hard hitting.
I own Terra Mystica. I love Terra Mystica. What do I think about the Gaia Project? Should I buy it? Should I play it?
It's a good question. Am I buying this for the family? I'm gonna let her answer first because it's really important for me.
I would say that the Gaia Project is 75% the exact same as Terra Mystica.
Okay.
A lot of the mechanics are the exact same. It feels the same. If you have a hankering to play Terra Mystica, the Gaia Project is gonna scratch that itch.
Good old home game words right there.
So you get that feel. You get the feel of the game. Differences are, it's just a lot smoother. So if you have played Terra Mystica before, when you terraform, there's all those little tiles you have to sort through and find the right one. That's gone in this game. It's not necessary. Yep. As soon as you terraform, you build, you make that planet habitable for your race, and you're done. So it's just streamlined.
Yeah, no changing of colors, no hunting through a box for a token. That is out of the way.
The God track has become the technology track in the Gaia Project. It feels similar, and yet it's a little improved, I feel.
Yeah, so basically in Terra Mystica, and I feel like we're in the stage where we're talking about the difference. So in Terra Mystica, it's whoever's at the top gets the points. Whoever's farthest ahead gets the points. In this one, it's very metered. So once you hit the 3rd step, you get 4 points. 4th step, you get 4 points. 5th step, you get 4 points. Now, like Terra Mystica, only one of you can get to 5. But if we're both on step 4, we're both going to get the 8 points that you get from getting there. And so it's not as much of a race to get to the top. And it does something. So the God track in Terra Mystica, it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It gave you points, but it did not build an engine. It did not change the way you played your game.
Yeah. Whereas in this, each track gives you different bonuses that can help you throughout the game, either for a one-time bonus or to build your engine. They all are very different, so you can focus on 1 or 2 depending on what you want your strategy to be. And like you said, you spend a lot of resources to move up on these tracks. And so it can be really frustrating in Terra Mystica if you spend all this time trying to get to the top and somebody at the very end goes right in front of you. So you still get the bonuses, you still get some points if you're high up on the track. And so that's just improved, I feel. The board, again, some people might not like it because you have to fit it together and whatnot, but it adds variability, which I think is nice, whereas Terra Mystica board is a little bit more stagnant.
Variety is the spice of life.
Yes. There are fewer of the different races in the Gaia Project.
Technically, there are now, because there's expansion races for Terra Mystica. There's no expansion races for this yet.
It may come.
I assume they might.
But either way, there are technically fewer, but there's still enough. I mean, there's a lot of races for you to play that have different powers. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's the theme. Some people like space theme. Some people like generic fantasy. It's a little bit your personal preference. It could really be any theme for me.
I agree. I'm a generic fantasy man myself, so this theme does not reach me as well. But there's nothing wrong with a space theme.
So having said all that, would you want both games in your collection?
This is really tough for me. I have a very soft spot for Terra Mystica. I have some nostalgia there. But no, I don't think you want both games in your collection. So for me, with all the differences we've talked about And before I give my final answer, we give one more difference. The in-game scoring is always different. So you deal out a tile for in-game scoring. Instead of having one in-game scoring addition, you have two. They're different every game, and it's tracked visually throughout the game. And so you're not having to count and keep that in your own mental math. That's just visible to you. And I find that to be one of the best things that they've changed. In-game scoring, having two conditions and being able to see it.
Yeah.
But again, no, I don't think you own them both. If you don't own either of them, you should hands down get Gaia Project, in my opinion. That's a second. That's an agreement. If you don't own either of them, Gaia Project is an amazing game, and you should own it before you own Terra Mystica. Now, if you own Terra Mystica, do you buy this game? And I just don't know. I'm going to say that many people will find it worth it. But as soon as you buy this game, in my opinion, you trade Terra Mystica away.
I agree. I think it feels so much similar that I don't think I would ever need to own them both. I wish they had made Terra Mystica 1.5 and just made these changes, because it's just more streamlined. They made improvements on Terra Mystica that I appreciate. The artwork's not as good. The theme is personal preference.
Yeah.
And, got that nostalgia for Terra Mystica.
Yep, we've had a lot of plays of Terra Mystica. We've even played it together, just two players, several times.
So would I replace Terra Mystica with the Gaia Project? I would need to think about.
I'll give one more argument in its favor, and this doesn't really apply to me that much, but the Gaia Project has an Automa, a solo game built by the Automa factory, and they typically do a very good job at solo games. Neither of us at this stage have played the solo version of this game. I do plan on revisiting that at some point, and I may come on and do a quick conversation about how it plays solo. If you're a solo gamer, that's definitely going to help you make that decision. If you don't solo game at all, then we're back to the other decision.
Okay, so the other question is, I have played Terra Mystica. I don't like Terra Mystica. Should I try the Gaia Project?
It depends on what your complaints were with Terra Mystica. If it was too long and too difficult for you, no, you shouldn't. If you felt that the way it did its rounds, or you hated that the in-game scoring was stagnant and felt like it favored some factions, if the God track bored you, a lot of those issues have been solved. But, like she said, it is 70 to 75% Terra Mystica. And all the core pieces of Terra Mystica are here. There are planets that everyone can terraform, basically, that everyone can habit.
Their home planet.
Right. Well, there are planets that everyone can habit that are not their home planets as well. And that's a new addition. And so you're not always having to terraform. There is a secondary way to terraform. And so there is two kind of diverging paths even to make something your home planet. There are poisonous planets, you purify it, you can own it. But again, if your complaints were about the overall core of Terra Mystica, you shouldn't. If they're about a few of the superfluous things or a few of the later mechanics, then yes, give it a go.
All right, final opinion.
Final opinion, absolutely approved. I give it a thumbs up. I would probably give it an 8 or an 8.5 on Boardgamegeek. I'm going to use those as a reference because I know people are pretty comfortable with that ranking.
I think it's enjoyable. I love it. Just got done playing it. I would play it again.
We're going to reset up then.
All right, well, thanks for watching. This has been the Chit Chat, and we'll see you soon.
All right, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave those for us too.
Yeah.
Bye.